Hi, I'm Jodie Thornton, and today I want to talk about whether we need to actually help our children understand the names for all of their feelings. So, this is a really common thing where we start to see exercises, even in daycares and early learning centres. We have this new kind of activity is to talk about feelings and to name them, and you'll see things like if you look at this face, what feeling is that? And this is it's not necessarily a bad idea, but it has some risks, and I also have some strategies that you can use that just don't require that. So, when I say it has some risks, what I want to talk about is things like categorizing feelings, or actually, let's start first with the idea that we can look at a person and we should know better how they're feeling than they could know themselves. So this often happens when we try to tell our children how they're feeling, or if they are trying to interpret how we're feeling, they might miss some cues, or they may just not recognize that there's a difference between how everybody displays their own feelings. So the classic example I had with my now 4-year-old, when she was about 2, I would say to her, "Oh, sweetie, you're so angry," and she would say, "I'm not angry. I just Sarah." Now, the thing is, like, I don't know if she had anger. It looked a lot like anger, like a lot. And you can see the response to you're feeling angry sounded a lot like anger. But here's the thing, it's not actually important whether I was right or wrong that it was anger. It may be that whatever feeling she was having was coming out looking like anger. And it may also be that she just felt so uncomfortable with the intensity of the feeling that she was behaving in an angry fashion. Or it may be just that, I just missed it and it was just something else that was going on for her. And what's not important is the label we give that feeling. So you can see the risk there is that if I'm focused on what is the label I'm giving that feeling, and have we really diagnosed you're feeling correctly, darling? It sounds really condescending because it is, and it's really that those look at the face and understand the feeling, and also talking about each individual feeling and what's the differences between those feelings. As I say, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a good way to start conversations about feelings, but the risk is that we start categorizing. If it looks like this, it has to be that. You've got the tick right or you've got a cross wrong and some of those face, I don't know if you've seen some of those face examples, but some of them I would struggle to, like, yes, I can see that if you wanted to have that feeling, you could draw that face, but you could also swap quite a few of them and it wouldn't necessarily feel wrong to me. So we want to make sure that we're not focusing on, for us or for our kids, the idea that we can sense from the outside with 100% accuracy what somebody's feeling. And then the second thing we want to do is really help our kids to have a strong sense of what that feeling is. So it doesn't matter if they have a label for it. What matters is that they get it. They know that it's okay for them to have feelings, but it's also that we understand that they are giving us some information. I'm going to talk about what information they're giving to us in the strategy part, but I want to talk about one more risk before we move on to the strategies to use instead. And one more risk is that we start talking about feelings in a way that is dismissive. And a lot of these exercises, the conclusion is, we all feel sad sometimes. Yes, but I feel really sad right now. And I don't feel okay. I need some help. And when we talk about everybody feels sad sometimes, everybody feels anxious sometimes, some of the time that's really, really validating. Some of the time it's like when we talk about going to a new daycare, it is pretty normal to feel worried because you don't know who's going to be your friend. Like, that's a really validating, yes, we all feel worried sometimes when we're going to a new place. But when we say, yes, you feel worried because we're going to a new place and that's okay, and can you put your shoes on please? You can see how we're basically doing the old style of feelings understanding, which is that in the past we say feelings are something that happens and we just don't pay attention to it. We notice them and we just let them go. which is not actually what we want. What we want is to understand what our feelings are telling us. So then I want to talk about the 3 things you can do instead of doing those exercises. So one is when you are reading stories with kids, and I do not mean go and get books that are about feelings. What I mean is your ordinary books, whatever books you already have, the books that, particularly the ones that they love, start asking them questions about, wow, if that happened to you, how would you feel? And see how there's a difference between how does the character feel and how do you feel, because 2 people in the same scenario can have completely different experiences. So we start to ask these questions about how would you feel if you were in that scenario, and then also what do you reckon the main character's thinking? Like, how are they feeling? And that's the difference between how I would feel if it was happening and also how they would feel. So that's one of the best ways to really start to talk about feelings in a way that doesn't require everybody to be feeling really grounded and centered when the big feelings are up and causing us difficulties. A second way is to talk about your own feelings. So even if you don't have a label for it, you might say, I'm feeling really anxious, and how I know that is around my heart feels really tight. Or I know I'm feeling anxious when normally I would be fine just to call somebody and make an appointment, but right now I don't feel like calling someone and making an appointment. Now I would say that exact sentence, exactly the way I said it, to a 2-year-old. Honestly, because I am having a conversation in a way that's just, you'll get it over time, and it's so little of what we communicate is through our words. So for a 2-year-old to hear me talking about how, gee, I must be feeling anxious today because I don't feel like making a phone call to make an appointment, is just part of normal life. So that narration of this is how I'm feeling, perhaps what I'm feeling in my body or what I'm noticing in my behavior, is giving me a clue to what my feelings are. And then the third thing we want to do is actually understand, what does the feeling tell us about what we need? So I'm feeling anxious. I think it's because I didn't get enough sleep last night. For some people, not getting enough sleep leads to increased anxiety the next day. If that's for you, say so. We also want to talk about I'm feeling really worried about going to my new job. So I would really like to, when I first get there, find out who might be a friendly person that I could talk to, and flipping that over to the daycare. So you're feeling really anxious. I wonder if it's because you're worried that no one will play with you today, because you don't know who the people are that you want to be friends with. And if that's right, then I wonder if that means that you need a little bit of help to find out who is somebody that might want to play with you. And then we work out what kind of help might that look like. But do you see how we don't just say, well, you're feeling sad. Great, we've acknowledged that. Now let's move on. We're recognizing what the feeling is telling us about what we need. And then we look at options for what we might do in order to meet those needs. So those are 3 things that I recommend doing instead of any of those exercises about like getting the definition of a feeling correct or incorrect as an exercise. As I say, it's not, I wouldn't say it's something that not to do, but I think there are so many more valuable things we could do with that time, and so many more enriching things that we could do with that time. So I'd really like to know how this has gone for you, whether you have any aha moments or any questions. Please pop them in the comments. And I'd also like to let you know that if you wanted to go into that next step of understanding how do we support our children when those feelings get really big and we don't know what to do in that moment, to avoid either a 30-minute tantrum or them lashing out. I have a new webinar out called Helping Little Children Handle Big Feelings, and the link to sign up to that is in the description of this video. Thanks so much for watching.